Why don't we hear more about this Renault RS01? And how good is it compared to other Group 3 cars and Gran Turismo 7? Well, I'm going to test its acceleration, top speed, tyre wear, fuel consumption, performance under BoP on different tracks, upshift points and its brake balance. That's right, I'm going to do the work so you don't have to. Coming up. Hello again, and thanks for settling into another Group 3 comparison video. Today we are checking out what we are missing with this Renault RS01. As always, I'm starting out by testing its acceleration and finding out where we need to upshift it to get the fastest speed from it. This is an MR car with a mid-mounted engine, and it feels a little bit quicker off the line than the other MR cars I've tried so far. But as I get going, I'm not really feeling it in the low end of the gears. This first run is a pedestrian 27.799. Next up, we're upshifting at 75% on the rev bar, and I'm hoping we're going to be moving a bit quicker. It may be a little slow in the lower part of the gears because of its weight. This car weighs between 1315 kilos and 1320 kilos, depending on which track you're on. This straight on Tokyo Expressway East falls into the high BoP category. For extra fun, we've got 7 gears to play with on this Renault, although they're not offering as much as they can just yet. This run is 27.580. Okay, so we're already quicker than the McLaren and the Lamborghini, and I think this run upshifting at 90% is going to be even quicker. I'm really interested to be testing this car as I've hardly ever driven it. I'm sure there's going to be something good about it, and I'm really looking forward to finding out what it is. I use a number randomiser on a list to select the next car to test. It's like a little Group 3 car raffle every time. Things are looking up so far as we move to 27.463, and I'm hoping for more. For all of my tests, BoP and equal conditions are on. I don't use any assists except for default ABS. For this test we have medium racing tyres at ×1 and 100 litres of fuel at ×1. In fact, I start with a full tank for all the tests as I want to know how the cars will behave when we actually race them. There is an outlap to the start line before every run, and I reset to the pits after every run. I also stay in the same lane every time. I'm upshifting at 100% on the rev bar for this one, and we've got a small improvement of 27.416. This is the last run I'm showing for its full rev reading, but I did do others. Although this car hits 100% on the rev bar at about 6,800 revs, it doesn't top out until 7,500 revs, meaning its best acceleration speed could be somewhere in between. So using the rev counter at the bottom right of the display, I tested upshifting at 7,000, 7,250, just before 7,500, and starting with 80% throttle. This run is the fastest of all, upshifting at 7,250 revs, although 7,000 revs was less than 200 slower. The best time is 27.313. So looking at the leaderboard now for acceleration, the RS01 slots into 4th place. It's the 4th car in a row now I've tested that finds speed getting revved out, although this one loses a little bit getting fully revved out. Although it's only a tenth of a second quicker than upshifting at 100% on the rev bar, this stuff matters. The Renault is already losing over 3 tenths to the Corvette, and another tenth would put it close to half a second down by the first split. Let's move on and check out the top speed. This is the first of 2 top speed tests I do, and we're at special stage Route X for this one. At this stage I usually speed up the video to get us to the end, but then I slowed back down for a series first on this channel. Out of absolutely nowhere, never seen before, I'm suddenly picking up a slipstream from a jumbo jet, and I was just about to tell you that I have equal conditions set to on. Anyway, I've sped it up again, and on this test we're looking at the Renault's top speed. We have 284 km/h to beat, which is set by the McLaren. I have 100 litres in the tank set to ×1, with soft racing tyres but tyre wear is off. Once we get down the hill, the cars settle back down to their natural top speed. When we get to the 9,000 metres mark, we slow the video right down again so we can have a little look at where we are before we reach the 10,000 metre gate. And that's the point where I take its top speed. As you can see from the speedo, the RS01 settles down at 280 km/h, putting it right on par with most of the cars I've tested so far, even though it might have had the ultimate tow. On the first top speed chart, it slots into joint second place with just about all the other cars. I think it's safe to say that 280 km/h looks like it might be the average now. Don't write off the Beetle though, as it's already proven that top speed is not everything by doing well around the lower mid-speed BoP tracks on previous videos. The McLaren is definitely the one to beat here at the moment, but bear in mind that there are many aspects to a fast Group 3 car besides top speed. So now we're at the Daytona Tri-Oval for the second speed test, and on this test we're looking at the time around the track rather than speed. The settings are the same as the last one. The last test leaderboard showed it can be hard to differentiate between these cars in this metric, so I do this test to see how well the cars hold their speed flat out round fast corners. The McLaren is once again quickest round here with 51.652, and the other three cars that had 280 km/h at Route X have hit between 52 and 52.3 on their runs here. You may have spotted that I already have a best time on the left, showing you this is not my first run and killing your lingering suspense. I always do an outlap with a full tank of fuel to get up to speed, but I felt I strayed too far from the yellow line the first time, so I started again with another outlap. The second run is only 5 thousandths quicker at 52.361. So taking that over to the leaderboard, the McLaren has a nice gap in first, and the Corvette keeps its speed better than the next 3 round faster bends. The RS01 drops to 5th even though it has the same straight line speed of the 3 above it. Let's move on to the BoP track tests. Welcome to the Sardegna B layout for the first of the balance of performance tests. GT7 put all the tracks into different BoP categories, and each car has a fixed setup for each category. So this is a low speed BoP track, and here are the others that fall into this group. Pause if it's gone too quick. I haven't really driven this car much at all, and I didn't remember it until I put my VR headset on and saw that annoying reflection on the screen. That wasn't the only thing I had a problem with, in fact it was probably the least. As we are coming up to turn 3, I'll talk about my gear usage first. I upshifted from 2nd to 3rd to exit turns 4, 5 and I think it was turn 8 at the top of the steep hill. It felt slow doing so, but actually gave me a marginally better time. The trouble I had round here is that the RS01 really struggled with front end grip. It almost feels like my feet are the only weight at the front of the car. Understeer is the worst of all the cars I've tested so far. Moving the brake balance to -1 and -2 definitely sorted that, but it was just too slow. Moving the brake balance to the rear is too dicey, and the front tyres felt like skimming a pebble across a lake. I settled on 0 brake balance in the end, and the times are not as bad as I'm describing, but it's very far from being a good choice on this track. I think it's important to add that these are just my experiences of the cars, and they're not intended to be lap guides. Whether you're quicker or slower than me, these tests are a direct comparison from one guy's perspective. The optimum time for this run is 1 minute 20.818. So looking at the board for this one, the Renault falls into 4th place in a sort of second group. The Lambo and the McLaren are considerably better. There are a lot of good cars to come, so performances with my driving style in this short, sharp track will be interesting. So next up we're on to the mid-speed BoP test, and here is a list of all of the tracks featured in this category. I've got a full tank and medium racing tyres, and as always on these BoPs, both are set to ×1. I'm not feeling particularly enthused after Sardegna, but the car actually feels a lot better around here. It steers around the first corner nice, and it's got a nice pull coming from a solid fourth gear up the hill. I never really connected properly over the crest as the car didn't want to turn here at pace. I wondered if compression is a little too stiff at the front to get the grip down, but don't quote me on that. The awkward valley at the bottom was actually alright in this Renault, and I felt more confident on the throttle than most others I've tried. The final two corners before the straight weren't great though, because once again I just can't get the front grip that I want to accelerate out of the corners. Just like Sardegna, I'm using zero brake balance. -1 was okay but didn't want to turn as well as 0. +1 had too much understeer and felt all wrong. To be honest, I really struggled with consistency in all my laps, and I never found a sequence of hitting purple sectors. Although this was my best lap, it falls woefully short of my optimum time, and without being able to check my optimum splits, I have no idea where I'm losing it. All in all, the RS01 felt a lot better around this track than the last one, and the optimum time is very competitive at 1 minute 19.127. As you can now see, it sits very respectfully in second place, but this is a competitive table so far with only half a second between all of them. I chose this track to test the grip and the weight transfers, and the Lambo is still the one to beat. Freeze the screen if you want to take a longer look before I move us on to Daytona. So next we move on to the final BoP test, and this one is the high speed category, which is relevant to all of the circuits you're seeing now. The Renault RS01 actually showed more than I thought it would on the last test, so let's see what it can do here. The brakes aren't as strong as on some cars, and I need to get the speed right down as turning this car has been its biggest issue so far. It's a bit twitchy on exit, so you have to take care on the throttle. I think of all the cars so far, this one has been the most difficult to trail brake. That might be my driving style, it might be the car, so it's just an opinion at this stage. I'm using zero brake balance here, but I'm not seeing much difference in time between 0 and -1. Just a bit more oversteer exiting on -1. I haven't yet mentioned the interior, but I do find all the different colours a bit distracting. It looks more like a toddler's play rig rather than a serious race car inside, but I'm sure someone loves it. I love going around these bank curves at Daytona in VR. It really gives you a feel of how fast you're going, and I think they've done a really good job of VR in this game. It's such an overwhelming difference that I just can't race on a flat screen now. The bus stop chicane feels quite nice in the Renault, dropping to third and upshifting straight to fourth with grip and control. I've actually been a little bit down on this car, but in reality it hasn't been too bad at all. In comparison to the others, its acceleration and top speed are solid enough, and it did well in the mid-BoP test. As long as you're slow enough to the apex in slow corners, it exits well out of them. On this track, the Corvette still rules with an optimum time of 1 minute 47.091, and it won't beat that. There were no improvements after this lap, and the RS01 finishes with an optimum time of 1 minute 47.373. That places it in fourth place on this table so far, only 3.5 tenths off the lead. It's interesting that the top 4 placed in the same order on the tri-oval top speed test, but the McLaren goes from first there to 5th here. Next up is the fuel consumption and tyre wear test. So we all love a car that slow burns the fuel or has tyres that last forever. On this test at Brands Hatch, we're going to see how this Renault compares to the others. For this one, I'm using 100 litres of fuel at ×3 and soft racing tyres at ×5. I drive at a fast pace, but not fast enough to risk binning it, and I continue until one of the tyres dies. I set up the cars and drive them as I'd race them based on what we've learned so far. For the RS01, that means fully revving it to about 7,200 revs and maybe upshifting early in a couple of corners. I use zero brake balance on all 3 BoP tests, that's what I'll use here. I don't show you the whole run because it takes too long. I cut the middle part out and we'll rejoin the video at last knockings on the tyres. We are now at the end of this run and you can see that the front left doesn't have much left. It's not bad at all on the corners, but I'm being overly cautious to keep it on the track. This test is not about speed, and a trip to the barrier isn't going to be a good ending. The last white dot disappears from the front left on the HUD and I stop here. At the top of the windscreen you can see we're on the 10th lap, meaning I've completed 9 laps including the out lap. This graphic shows where I've stopped on the track and confirms that I've completed 9.7 laps. Putting it on the tyre wear comparison table slots it into a respectable 3rd place, with very similar results to the Lamborghini and the Honda. As the table starts to fill up, this feels like it's going to be an above average place to be on the leaderboard. You can also see from the in-car HUD that I have 47% left of fuel, meaning that I've used 53%. As I started with 100 litres, that means I've used 53 litres. So 53 litres divided into 9.7 laps equals 5.46 litres per lap. On the fuel consumption chart, the Renault hits rock bottom, sucking fumes when others have a couple of laps to go. Over 10 laps, the Renault is drinking nearly 8 litres more than the McLaren. That is substantial. Well, that's it from me for this one. If you appreciate the work, please subscribe, drop me a like and share your thoughts. Also, you could check one of the other videos from this growing playlist. Thanks for watching and see you very soon on the next one. I would jams out, but they took my tunes away.